The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub, where we bring you the most compelling and chilling true crime documentaries. In today's gripping story, we uncover the shocking tale of a husband's deadly secret that was exposed, unraveling a seemingly perfect marriage. This marriage betrayal goes beyond just an affair. It's a journey of heartbreak, deception, and the painful moment when a wife takes the power back. Watch as the truth comes to light and the consequences of betrayal unfold in this emotional true crime documentary. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more gripping stories from the world of true crime. In the peaceful Maryland suburbs, Maria Jenkins had long been seen as the ideal mother and wife. She sacrificed everything to provide a secure, caring home for her husband, Richard, and their two kids. But Maria had been keeping a terrible secret beneath the perfect facade of their family life. Her spouse was unfaithful. Months had passed since she learned of the affair, and although she had thought about pardoning him for the benefit of their kids, it was now impossible. Richard showed no remorse, and Maria was on the verge of openly ending it. Maria Jenkins had always been the kind of woman who thought that family was strong. She grew up in a small town and had seen her parents' marriage withstand life's ups and downs, and she aspired to do the same for herself. She had once heard her mother, a gentle but strong woman, say that love was about sticking together through the good times as well as the bad. Maria's conception of marriage had been molded by those words, and she had held fast to that conviction for a very long time, even as her own life started to fall apart. Shortly after graduating from college in the late 1990s, she met Richard. He promised her a life full of adventure and love, and he was charming and ambitious. That promise appeared to be being kept for years. They created a life that Maria loved, purchased a house in Maryland, and had two lovely children. While Richard put in long hours at work to support his children, Sophie and Liam, she became a stay-at-home mom and spent her time with them. Maria believed that she was the cornerstone of their family, keeping everything together so that their kids could be raised in a secure and caring setting. However, things evolved over time. Maria became aware of minor changes in Richard's conduct around 2011. He appeared to be more preoccupied, and occasionally he would arrive home late while wearing a subtle scent of a perfume that wasn't hers. She initially tried to ignore it, dismissing it as either her vivid imagination or the stress of his job. She had never had any cause to question Richard's loyalty, after all. He was an excellent parent to their children. Even if their marriage wasn't flawless, Maria believed they were a good couple. Then it was more difficult to disregard the signs. He kept his phone near to him like a secret and was using it more and more. He would frequently turn away from her when they went to bed and spend the rest of the night browsing through messages. Their discussions had become tense and more superficial than they had ever been. A chilly distance had taken the place of the intimacy that had once flowed so freely between them. Maria was unable to fully explain. On January 5, 2012, everything was different. Maria had been attempting to distract herself from the persistent sense that something was amiss by performing the routine housework. She discovered a credit card bill that was significantly larger than usual while going through the mail. She was drawn in by curiosity and, against her better judgment, chose to read the statements. She discovered the hotel receipts at that point. She scanned the charges, her hands shaking. They lasted more than one night. Over the past few months, Richard had no need to be at the same hotel where several transactions had taken place. Slowly, the truth of what was happening set in. Maria, however, took some time to act. She was aware that confronting him would require more than just a gut instinct or some dubious accusations. Over the next few weeks, Maria started to look into it in private. In order to avoid leaving any evidence of her searches, she examined his phone while he was asleep. She discovered messages, some of which validated her fears. Richard had a new girlfriend. Like a tidal wave, the pain struck her. She did not, however, confront him. Rather, she started gathering evidence. Pictures showing him leaving their home at strange hours, discussions he had with the woman, and even a few instances where he made the mistake of leaving work early. When February finally arrived, Maria had ample evidence. However, she remained silent for a short while longer since she was afraid of ruining their family. At least the Richard she had known was still the one she loved. She wished that perhaps, just possibly, he would change his mind and see what he was doing before it was too late, and she didn't want to destroy their home. After weeks of restless nights and mounting annoyance, Maria made the decision to face him on February 15th. The only sound in the house was the slight buzz of the heater as it forced warmth through the vents. The children had gone to bed. As Maria walked toward Richard, who was seated in the living room, unaware of what was about to happen, her heart thumped in her chest. When she opened her mouth to speak, the words came out clumsily, even though she had practiced the exchange 1,000 times in her mind. Richard's response was exactly what she had feared. He initially disputed it. He asserted that she was exaggerating, that nothing was happening, and that he had been meeting with clients or working late. However, once Maria presented the facts she had collected, the truth could not be avoided. He sobbed and pleaded for forgiveness, citing life stresses and work-related stress. Though she was upset, Maria had a glimmer of optimism that perhaps this was the wake-up call he needed. However, things just became worse. Over the next few weeks, Richard's perspective changed. He grew aloof and defensive rather than trying to mend their marriage. He accused her of pushing him away when Maria brought it up again, looking for some indication of regret. He accused her of not paying enough attention to him since she was too preoccupied with the children. By the third encounter, Richard's lack of remorse was evident. He had no intention of stopping. He was now making Maria feel as though she was the issue. Maria struggled with herself for weeks. Her thoughts kept returning to the disagreements, the betrayal, and her children's future, making it impossible for her to fall asleep. She didn't want to split up her family because Sophie and Liam were everything to her. But she could always see the dishonesty, the lack of regret, and the lies in Richard's eyes. The 3rd of March was the tipping point. Like any other day, Maria had been at the grocery store running errands. Sophie, however, rushed up to her when she got home and inquired about an odd object she had seen earlier. Richard had introduced Lisa, another lady, into their home while Maria was abroad. 6-year-old Sophie had witnessed them cuddling and sitting too close in the living room. Maria was heartbroken by the question's innocence. Even though her daughter didn't comprehend what was going on, the picture was enough to ruin Maria's hopes of keeping her marriage intact. A mistake was no longer at issue here. By taking his affair into their house and their children's lives, Richard had gone too far. As Maria lay awake in bed that night, she understood that the only way to move forward was to come up with a plan. She would collect as much proof as she could, and she would reveal him for what he really was when the moment was perfect. No further second chances would be given. For Richard Jenkins, this marked the start of the end. Maria Jenkins was at her breaking point by the beginning of March. The treachery that she had attempted to forgive had now transformed into something more profound, an unwavering determination to take back her life. She had given up everything for years in order to create a family, a home, and a life she believed to be secure. But that existence had become a falsehood because of Richard, the guy she had once trusted. He didn't merely harm her anymore. The saddest part was that he had taken his betrayal into their children's life and degraded their home. Maria was not able to forgive that. Maria sat calmly at the kitchen table on the evening of March 6th while Richard departed for yet another business trip. Her mind whirled while her hands held her coffee cup. She stopped crying. She had cried as much as she possibly could. She had regained her composure and determination. She had resolved to obtain indisputable evidence, evidence that would not only expose Richard but also guarantee his demise. Her thoughts were already focused on the annual family reunion, which would serve as a unifying factor. That would be the ideal opportunity to tell the truth. Maria had a systematic plan. She bought tiny hidden cameras online that could be passed off as commonplace items. One camera was placed inside a picture frame in the living room, while the other was carefully hidden into a decorative clock on the dresser in the bedroom. In order to capture everything without bringing attention to herself, she made sure that the angles were ideal. There would be no chance of being found out. Every second Richard and Lisa spent together in their house would be captured on camera. Together with the cameras, Maria surreptitiously put a voice recorder in Richard's briefcase that would start when he made a sound, recording every hushed word and every damning phone call. By now, she was familiar with his routine. Richard was irresponsible, assuming Maria had had enough of him. Her silence, in his opinion, indicated that she had come to terms with his adultery. He was completely mistaken. Maria emotionally separated from Richard during the next few weeks. She spent more time with the kids and stopped attempting to talk to him. She made herself scarce so that he might continue his affair without hindrance. Her absence fueled his conceit, and Richard became more brazen in his actions every day. In the belief that no one would ever discover, Maria watched in silence as he repeatedly brought Lisa into their house. However, the cameras recorded everything they did and said as soon as they stepped inside the residence. Maria possessed an expanding collection of audio recordings and video footage that depicted a guy who had not only deceived his wife but also destroyed the foundation of their marriage. She had both a profound sense of sadness and enlightenment. She would expose him for her own sake and the benefit of her children, not for retaliation. She could not allow kids to grow up in a lie-based home. The Jenkins family reunion preparations were well underway as June drew near. This year was no exception to the annual gathering that Richard's parents had been holding at their expansive estate on the borders of Maryland. On July 4th, a day full of games, picnics, and family customs, the reunion was scheduled. Richard's siblings, their spouses, relatives, nieces, nephews, and everyone else would be present. For Richard, it was an opportunity to portray himself as the prosperous guy with the ideal family, as well as a time to rekindle old memories and commemorate family history. Maria, however, had a different perspective. She saw it as her chance to reveal the truth to Richard's most important audience. She pretended to be the loyal wife and played along with the preparations, but on the inside, she was getting ready for something much more significant. She had gathered all the evidence by now. She had text messages from Richard's phone, audio recordings, and hours of video that all pointed to his affair with Lisa. Denial would not be an option. Maria made the decision that everything will be revealed during the reunion. The silence had been enough for her. She had collected enough evidence to guarantee that no one would be left in the dark when the truth was revealed. In addition to exposing Richard's treachery, she would ensure that he suffered the consequences of his conduct in front of those who believed they knew him the best. The smell of freshly cut grass filled the air on the sunny and beautiful morning of July 4th. The reunion was held at Richard's parents' house, which was the ideal location. A large backyard with picnic tables prepared for the feast, huge oak trees offering shade, and happy kids running around. Despite her pulse pounding with excitement, Maria's face remained neutral as she arrived with Richard and the children. The USB drive, which had a meticulously edited collection of the audio and movies she had gathered over the previous few months, was already ready. As anticipated, the day started out with stories being told, laughter, and the aroma of barbecue filling the air. Unaware that the time was running out on his facade, Richard acted as the devoted father and prosperous businessman, socializing with his family. Maria remained near their kids, keeping a tight eye on everything while keeping her head clear and concentrated. She needed to time this just so. Maria realized the time had come as the sun started to drop and the family came inside for their customary slideshow. All of Richard's family members were seated comfortably in the living room, anticipating the annual collection of family recollections. Despite feeling her heart race, Maria remained calm. While Richard's father connected the laptop to the screen and set up the projector, she stood silently in the back. Maria took action as soon as the room was dark and everyone's eyes were fixed on the screen. Under the pretense of changing the settings, she went over to the laptop and silently inserted her USB drive into the port. Making sure no one saw the changeover, she sped through the files. Then she hit play with a firm hand. She had meticulously planned this, waiting for the right opportunity, and now that Richard's whole family was there would be no way out. As the projector clicked on, the room became silent. Everyone's gaze shifted to the screen as the machines recognizable were reverberated around the room. Richard's father, who always planned the reunion, nodded and grinned at Maria, believing she had prepared a special meal for the family. A tribute, maybe, but what was shown on the TV was not the joyful, contented family moments that everyone had anticipated. Rather, a startled silence descended upon the audience as the blurry video came to life. Everyone recognized Richard when he appeared on the television, but he wasn't by himself. There she was, Lisa, clearly visible. Despite its flaws, the video captured them together in the closeness of their house. Although Maria had documented every detail, the soft touches, the stolen kisses, the whispered words, Richard had thought he was safe. The room fell into oppressive quiet. Initially, nobody was able to really understand what they were seeing. Richard's carefully cultivated image over the years was shattered by the pictures on the television. After a collective gasp, the whispering started. Previously admiring faces now twisted in astonishment and bewilderment. Richard became pale and froze in his chair. Like a tidal wave, the weight of what was happening fell over him. His legs felt weak under him as he attempted to stand. Realizing too late that he had underestimated Maria, he glanced at her in panic. He had assumed that she would remain mute, that her desire for a stable family and her love for the kids would prevent her from speaking again. However, Maria had discovered her voice, and what she had started could not be stopped. In a desperate attempt to halt the movie, Richard jumped out of his chair and ran toward the laptop as it continued. Maria, however, had placed herself between the screen and him. Her eyes were icy and unforgiving as she stood erect, obstructing him. She didn't have to say anything. He knew that this was far from over just by her presence. The video continued, cutting to the sound recordings she had painstakingly gathered. Unaware that every word he spoke was being recorded, Richard's voice filled the room as he charmed Lisa and made promises. Every second that went by, the consequences of his actions weighed more heavily on him. He had believed that he was in charge of everything, but Maria had completely outperformed him. The room's mood changed from astonishment to disdain. Once his staunchest defenders, Richard's family now regarded him with shame and incredulity. His parents were unable to talk or even look at their son as they sat rigidly. His siblings looked at one another in an attempt to make sense of the difference between the man they believed they knew and the one who was shown on the screen. In a flash of wrath, Richard grabbed at Maria, intending to silence her, but his older brother James got up. James, however, was quicker and intervened to restrain Richard. Richard could not shake the feeling that everything was unraveling, even in his rage. Maria was unervingly calm. Even as Richard's world fell apart around him, Mary stayed composed because she had foreseen every response and every consequence. Maria grabbed into her suitcase as the final tape came to a close and the room fell silent again. She took out the divorce papers with the same steady hand. Knowing that this day would arrive, she had been preparing them for weeks. She tossed them at Richard's feet without saying a word. She was explicit in her wording. Richard would lose half of what they had created together, and she would be granted full custody of the kids. There was no place for him to dispute, no room for discussion. The proof was indisputable, and there was no going back now. Richard's following 2 weeks turned into a nightmare. His actions' repercussions started to become clearer to him more quickly than he could comprehend. Armed with indisputable proof, Maria proceeded quickly through the court system. Richard made feeble and unsuccessful attempts to fight for custody in court. He had no protection. After seeing hours of video and audio recordings, the judge was forced to take Maria's side. The court granted Maria full custody of the children on August 15, 2012. In addition to being required to pay monthly child support, Richard would forfeit half of their assets. The judge was stern and threatened to put him in jail if he didn't make the payment. His previously secure and well-respected life had entirely collapsed. Richard's role within the family also deteriorated throughout the course of the weeks. His parents, who had always been his strongest supporters, were no longer able to view him in the same light. Disgusted by the event that had upended their family, his siblings turned away. Once a guy with everything, Richard was now alone and lonely. Despite the anguish of the process, Maria felt a sense of release. She had dedicated years to being the ideal wife, putting their family's needs ahead of her own happiness. But she was free now. Free from the deceit, the lies, and the heartache that never stops. She went on, concentrating on her kids and creating a new life for them. In contrast, Richard descended into self-destruction. He had lost everything because of the affair. His dignity, his family, and his reputation. He was reminded of the day he lost everything each month when he paid the court-mandated child maintenance. He was plagued by resentment and found it difficult to return to his previous way of life. Maria, however, had moved on. With her kids on her side and the community behind her, she found strength in the very people Richard had ignored. Maria had taken back her life, but the wounds of the past would never go away. She didn't have to be the ideal wife anymore. At last, she could be herself. The memories of that day would haunt Richard for the rest of his life, as he was forced to deal with the fallout from his decisions. The world was made aware of his lies. What had appeared to be a harmonious family facade descended into a controversy that would follow Richard for the rest of his life. The reunion would be remembered for treachery and the terrible results of one man's infidelity rather than for joy. Maria came out stronger, freed from the bonds of a loveless marriage, and at last prepared to take back her life, even though the anguish persisted.